very real about that movie. That somehow in the way Wes Craven captured the world of voodoo and the stories that floated out about what went on the set, that people from the crew made fun of it and then kind of got zapped with it, I really believe in it.
It's basically based on the discovery of a real-life zombie, somebody who had died in Haiti and who had been declared dead by an American doctor who later, I think a year later, turned up alive.
People are put in boxes and given this potion, and you know, they come back up and their brain's destroyed and they'll do whatever you tell them to do.
It had a supernatural element to it, but it didn't feel far from the truth. He picks very basic common fears.
They give you the Jesus juice, they put you in the box, they nail you, and they leave you there. And what happens is they'll get some voodoo priest to come and undig you, and at that point he'll put the whammy on your head by telling you that you've been dead.
That notion that these people were being buried alive made it more scary than even something that was purely fantasy.
You have to watch what you believe, because it can bite you on the ass.
I've even thought about being cremated. Just want to really make sure I'm totally, totally gone.
It triggered something in me as a child, hypnotically, that took me to another place.
With the success of Dracula, Universal really felt that it had, you know, found the new Lon Chaney in the person of Bela Lugosi, and were eager to, you know, exploit his talents in other frightening pictures. And it was announced that he was going to play the monster in Frankenstein.
Lugosi was very offended that he would be playing this like lumbering, stupid creature that didn't speak, and his face was all covered in makeup.
James Whale spotted Boris Karloff in the Universal Pictures commissary one day.
Mary Shelley's novel and James Whale's film both answer the fundamental horror question, where do monsters come from?
Now when I see some of those scenes, I just think, oh my God, audiences in 31 must have been having a heart attack.
It's alive. It's moving. It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive.
The creation of the monster is the creation of the horror film.
The first time he's standing up and walks in comes through the door, it's unbelievable. You know, I still can't believe how effective that makeup is and how Karloff is.
The design of the makeup is so extraordinary, and Karloff's performance is genuinely brilliant. And he manages to be really scary. I mean, there are moments when the monster looks, it's frightening, but then there are moments like when he reaches toward the light that are beautiful.
The thing with Karloff was he had those eyes. He had those dead eyes.
He just wants to make friends. He makes friends with a little girl and accidentally kills her.
There's a little girl picking flowers, and Frankenstein just kind of shows up. And it's this very sweet scene because they're, kind of plucking flowers together, and then he doesn't understand when they've run out of flowers that, the difference between human life and flowers, and so he takes her and throws her in the water.
No, you're hurting me! No!
Carl Laemmle Sr., the head of Universal, was particularly upset by this scene and wanted it cut. The cutting actually made it worse.
They immediately cut to him throwing daisies into the water, to the father carrying the lifeless body of the girl, which just makes the monster look more vicious.
I can't tell it. Oh, God. Oh, you made me strap on the thing, and I just...
I mean, that really freaked me out.
It's that genre taken almost to an art level.
The murder sequences in Seven are art directed within an inch of their lives. They actually owe a great deal to the Italian horror films of the 70s, what are called the gialli.
The way that David Fincher shot it and how dark it was and the camera angles and just this whole subdued palette of the film
creates the sense that you're in a world that's coming apart.
He was very, very inventive in his different ways that he killed people, and they all gave you the chills.
They built it up with the 7 sins, and you were just knowing, okay, this one just happened, so it's got to be soft or it's got to be hate.
They just talked about what
the victims were going through. And they showed pictures, and the reactions of the victims being interviewed after it happens to them is just insane.
Look at this fat, disgusting man that ate himself to death, that couldn't even pick his head up and it just fell in the bowl of spaghetti.
The details in the murders and the details in the killings were absolutely gruesome.
They find a guy in a apartment, and they walk in, and it's a low angle again, up and it's smoky, and there's those Christmas tree air fresheners hanging everywhere, and the first thing you're thinking to yourself is, why the hell is there air fresheners everywhere? And they find this guy who looks like, I don't know if that was an actor, bro, and I hope it wasn't. I hope it was all just a dummy. It looks like a corpse.
It's dated exactly 1 year ago today.
I got a hair sample, I got a stool sample, I got piss, I got fingernails.
He's laughing at us. You got what you deserved.
Your imagination runs wild, which I think is the key to a great scary movie.
We were actually shooting in an embalming room in Long Beach, California, and while we were filming, we were being supervised by the embalmer, and there was a knock at the door, and they had a fresh corpse they needed to bring in, and the embalmer had a donut in his mouth. He goes, "Oh, excuse me, guys, I got to take care of business."
I loved Phantasm because where I lived in Massachusetts sort of looked just like the neighborhood in that movie, and the house I grew up in was about a half a block from a cemetery, and there was a mortuary, so it looked almost just like what was in that movie.
The way the kids' room looks sort of reminds me of my own childhood, but also this feeling that you're a kid and that you see things that adults don't.
Angus Scrimm, the tall man, he's one of the great boogeymen in horror film.
We filmed a lot in mortuaries and graveyards, and they do imbue me.
One of the scenes in Phantasm that scared me the most was when that kid's in bed and he has a nightmare sequence and he looks up and he sees the tall man, and the tall man's looking right over him.
I do think that turned out to be one of the most effective scenes in the picture, a real shocker.
Then I go to bed and I sit there and you keep opening your eyes and you can't close your eyes because you keep thinking the next time you open them, the tall man's gonna be there, and you have to kind of get out of bed just looking at the floor, hoping that if he's there, that like he doesn't notice you.
Roses are red, violets are blue, but the iris is the flower that will mean the end of it.
It's a film which doesn't want to follow any rules.
You could very well say it was, in some ways, the first punk horror movie.
It's like Douglas Sirk on an acid trip. Suspiria is about a young American ballet student who is going to Germany to study at a prestigious German ballet academy.
When you go to see a Dario Argento movie, you're just watching horrible things happen to people in a beautiful, beautiful way.
As wicked and as violent as they are, they're beautiful. They're lavish colors.
The blood, I mean, it's just like red, like you wouldn't believe. I mean, it's like almost in-your-face day glow.
He puts the gore in gorgeous.
One of the very last films shot in 3-strip Technicolor.
Dario styled it after Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and you can actually see that if you look at it very carefully. He always saw it as like a Walt Disney horror film.
The first 15 minutes, I'm a specialist of the first 20 minutes, 15 minutes. And then this is one of my best.
And he comes up with these incredibly elaborate ways to kill people. And there's one great scene in Suspiria where the first girl that dies falls through this huge, beautiful plate glass window.
think the first 20 minutes of Suspiria have never been rivaled in cinema of horror ever.
Something could go wrong when you give birth, you know? There could be any number of things, and this is the ultimate thing that could go wrong.
What are you going to do when you look into the bassinet and you see your child for the first time and it's the devil?
You know, there's this like special, beautiful bond between a woman and her baby that she gives birth to. I think like if your baby has like, you know, black devil eyes and horns and a tail, you know, the bonding is kind of hard.
The Dakota, which is probably one of the scariest buildings architecturally in America. Those gargoyles, that corner, Central Park, Strawberry Fields Forever and all that.
Without the music in Rosemary's Baby, it wouldn't be nearly as scary.
You saw her absolutely surrounded by all these people that could very easily break her.
When you first find out that there are these devil worshippers at play, that gets you.
I don't like those kind of things where you're like, the whole world is against you. Like she you know, Mia Farrow's screwed, man. The whole apartment building's after her.
It's because that guy wanted to make it as an actor. That's why.
Typical New York co-op board.
The doctor tells her, you know, take these pills, don't ask questions, don't read books. Oh, okay, no problem.
I think people can definitely relate to that, to men who are stronger saying, darling, you're just overwrought, why don't you lie down? And the devil will come have sex with you. It's happened to all of us.
The scene in Rosemary's Baby, I guess when she gets drugged up and gets raped by the devil, that can't be fun.
The rape scene is just awful. It's just awful. You don't know what's happening. You don't know if it's real. You're experiencing it like she did.
It's all shot at a vertiginous angle, like you're not quite sure what's happening, and I think that that's what makes it more horrifying, is it is sort of suggested and it's very dreamlike.
When she wakes up the next morning, she thinks it was a dream. And she then discovers scratches on her body, and her husband says, oh, I'm sorry, I was a bit of an animal last night. And that's really clever, because the film is like a dream, and at the end of it, you can't quite remember what you have seen, but what you imagine seeing, and that is smart filmmaking.
Don't Look Now was based on a short novel by Daphne du Maurier, who also wrote the story that Hitchcock turned into Rebecca.
The director, Nicholas Roeg, was not somebody who was known for thrillers. He was a cinematographer turned director with a very, very fine visual eye. For a great deal of its running time, it's very much a psychological story about two people love each other very much, but their marriage has really been shaken by the death of their child. And they go to Venice.
It's what Hitchcock always used to do, of picking the location and then thinking about things.
The husband, Donald Sutherland character, catches glimpses of someone who looks like his dead daughter, wearing a red raincoat. At the same time, there's a killer on the loose in the city.
Donald Sutherland finds himself in a room, in a cavernous room, with somebody standing in a red Macintosh, apparently weeping in the corner of the room.
Facing that character and not sure what's going to happen. You find it in films ranging from Blair Witch Project, where you get it at the very end, to The Sentinel, to Dario Argento's Phenomena, to Psycho.
He backs her into a corner and says, it's all right, everything's going to be fine, thinking that what he's doing is finally saving the child that he failed to save in the first reel of the film.
Come on.
Darlings.
It's in fact the person who has been committing the grisly murders which have been going on around the edges of the story all the time they're in Venice.
You are just horrified to see those hopes dashed.
It's like, that's what it is? It's a dwarf in a raincoat?
When the movie screened in New York, I invited like 50 of my friends to come see it. And it was really fascinating because some of them were just absolutely pissed off about the movie. I mean, like really, really, like violently angry. Some people came out going, oh my God, that was like an acid trip. Other people came out and were really like just moved by the movie.
Most horror films go very chronologically, whereas this one throws you off. You know, not only is the protagonist confused, so's the viewer. You're not sure what's real and what happened first.
Tim Robbins' character, he's a Vietnam veteran, he's a mailman, he's a very regular guy who is having what are either the most horrific hallucinations of all time or is being tormented by the creepiest, most deformed demons of all time.
You weren't sure if this was a Vietnam movie. You weren't sure if this was a supernatural movie. You weren't sure if this was just a movie about some guy's psychosis.
What is going on? This is this alternative universe. It's really dark. What's that creeping in the corner?
We know he was in Vietnam. We know he played with some drugs. But the things that we're seeing...
Every once in a while you catch a glimpse of like a tail coming out of someone's back, or...
You'd freak out, I remember that.
And then like you'd have like a head, like somebody, you'd see somebody in a distance and they're like going like this.
Shake their head back and forth like this and you can't focus on them. You know, it's just...
That freaks me out.
Just tricks you, man, because it starts off very sexual, like dance scene. Elizabeth Benyo's all hot, look young and spicy, and she's all over Tim Robbins. And all of a sudden, his tail comes in, and she gets all evil, man. And then you just go,
And then we start hearing flapping.
There with him. It's like the one moment that you have safe passage, and all of a sudden she's a lizard, and you're screwed because you're dancing with the lizard.